Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome along to the Football Insomniac. It is the Friday evening football show live here on A State of Mind. As you can see, it's not Callum McFadden that's joining me today. Instead, we have NLG Sports, Bonnie Rigg, Rose. Anything else you want to throw in there, Sean? It's Sean McGill. How are you doing?
Not bad, mate, not bad. It's a pretty mental week in football, so it seems like a good time to jump on. And I'm glad I'm here with you because you're one of the very few people who knows just how hard it is to be in the shadow of Amy Canavan. So I feel like we can
Oh,
relate on
I had
that
to get
level.
rid of her. I had to get rid of
Oh,
her. I sent her to the Monday morning show.
I've been
Ah.
trying.
We'll see if she comes in the comments. But we've got a lot to discuss from this week in football. If you're looking for updates on the Celtic managerial position, A Celtic State of Mind was just on before we came on air. You'll find the clip of that with Laura Bradburn, Tony Haggerty, and Russell Boyce. Go watch that once you've finished watching here. But right now, we're going to discuss the Champions League final coming up tomorrow, Sean, and it's got the potential to be a cracking game of football.
It definitely does. I mean, I don't, it's maybe not like the sexiest Champions League final, Chelsea, Manchester City. You see it twice a season in the Premier League, and we've seen it in an FA Cup semi-final already this season. But I think because of these two sides and the sort of that you'd say probably the two of the most foremost tactical geniuses in world football at the moment, in Thomas Tuchel and Pep Guardiola, that it does make it a very, very intriguing encounter. And Tuchel's had Guardiola's number so far this season, so will that happen again on Saturday? It's a very, very interesting one.
Looking at the odds for the game, Man City seem to be the favourites with the bookies, sitting around about evens, and you can get just about over 3-1 on Chelsea. So do you think that odds are set pretty right for this game, or do you think there could be a wee upset coming?
I think City are definitely the favourites. I mean, obviously they strolled to the Premier League title, but the job that Thomas Tuchel's done since coming at Chelsea has been a very, very good one. And it's only the last few weeks where he's kind of come a bit undone. There's been a few sort of shaky results. You saw that they sort of just stumbled to Champions League qualification thanks to Leicester kind of falling away.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that Chelsea can certainly hurt Man City because, like I said, you've seen it throughout the season. So I would make City slight favourites, but I think that Chelsea are certainly no massive underdogs. I'd say they were bigger underdogs back in 2012 when they won the Champions League in Bayern Munich's back garden.
Yeah, so anyone that's watching in the comments, we're live right now on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitter. Do get involved. Let us know your thoughts ahead of the big Champions League final tomorrow night. It's an 8 o'clock kickoff between Man City and Chelsea. Looking at the route to the final, Sean, I think when you look at it, it was a kind of similar route that both teams had. They faced some of the bigger sides in European football, even going down to the semi-final. Man City edging PSG 4-1, Chelsea beating Real 3-1. The game that really impressed for me was City beating PSG. I mean, PSG for me would have definitely been the favourites for that tournament. You look at the strength and the squad depth that they have. City weren't on the best of runs going into that as well, and they just pull it out the bag. And I just think when you look at Pep Guardiola, it's hard to argue against him being one of the best managers of this generation.
Oh, definitely. And I thought that the first half of that game, the first leg in Paris, it looked like PSG were really going to hurt Man City. And then basically from the second half to the end of the second game, it was just complete dominance from Man City. They looked so assured, and especially at that level when this is obviously their first Champions League final, and there's always been that question mark, and it's Pep Guardiola's first in a decade, which is, like you said, I mean, he's a genius and he's a fantastic manager, but at 10 years for him not to be in a Champions League final is a very, very long time. So there was, when PSG took the lead, you thought this could be sort of really psychologically damaging to Manchester City, but the way they sort of came back into that game, and there was fortune about it with deflections and free kicks and stuff like that, but I just thought they looked so confident, and I didn't really have many doubts for them in the second leg. I just thought that they are a team who are going to see that out. And the way they've approached this Champions League, I think that in the past, Pep Guardiola's been guilty of overcomplicating things in these Champions League games, maybe changing up his formation and system and stuff like that. But he's been quite sort of regimented in the way that he's approached these games. He seems to know his best team. I'm sure we'll get onto that. And if he sticks with that on Saturday night tomorrow, I think he'll have a very good chance of lifting the trophy.
Now, City have got the chance to actually go through this tournament unbeaten. They haven't lost any of their knockout games. They won 5 and drew 1 in the group stage. That would be an incredible achievement. I think Villarreal did that the other night when they lifted the Europa League. They went through that whole tournament unbeaten. Chelsea's only slip-up is that 1-0 defeat against Porto, but basically a goal in the 93rd minute when the tie was already done, although an outstanding goal at that with the overhead kick. It is probably a very close one to call when I look at it. Chelsea, for me, their biggest result was beating Atletico in the last 16. Going through 3-0. Atletico, one of the best teams in Europe, went on to win La Liga this season. That was a real turn up for the books for me.
Yeah, I really fancied Atletico in that game because I think they've been fantastic this season. Chelsea did manage to catch them in this sort of slump that they've had. Atletico almost won La Liga twice. Like, they won it by going 10 points clear, and you thought that's that done, and then they basically went right down to make it neck and neck and had to win it again in the last few weeks of the season. So Chelsea did catch Atletico at the right time, I think, but still dumping them out in the way that they did was impressive, and Atletico never really laid a glove on Chelsea, and that's what Thomas Tuchel had done. I mean, under Frank Lampard, Chelsea did not look defensively stable at all, particularly from set pieces. It was sort of become undone from set pieces throughout Lampard's tenure. And then as Tuchel's come in with that back three, they've looked so solid. And it took a while for the attacking patterns to come. And it's still, you see that in games with the sort of Werner getting caught offside, that they do struggle in an attacking sense at times. They don't know how best to sort of approach that system in an attacking sense. But defensively, they look fantastic. And I think that if they do win the Champions League, it's going to be that defence you look at who's going to win them it, really.
I think one of the things that Thomas Tuchel's done really well since he came into Chelsea is he's managed to get the best out of the players that Frank Lampard really couldn't. Guys like Ziyech, guys like Werner, who were kind of struggling, Havertz as well, and he's managed to get the value out of them. You can see now why Chelsea spent that amount of money on them. And I tell you what, all it takes is for City not to have a good day, just like they did when they played them in the league a couple of weeks ago, and that trophy could be going to London. The biggest surprise for me looking at it is, we speak about this, we're saying City went through 4-0, 4-2, 4-1, so they score the goals, but the top goal scorer across both teams in this competition is Olivier Giroud with 6 goals. Now, that's someone that doesn't start every game for Chelsea. In fact, he's only played 257 minutes of the competition, which means he's averaging a goal every 43 minutes, which to me is incredible for someone at his standard. Do you think he could have a key influence in this game?
Yeah, I mean, if it's still tight, you're going to be looking at the likes of Giroud to come off the bench and make a difference. And maybe that's the plan, that Timo Werner will start and sort of wear down that high line of Manchester City, try and run them ragged on the counter, because even though Chelsea do enjoy possession, you would expect City to dominate the ball in a game like this. And maybe Giroud can come on and sort of fill those gaps in the later stages of the game. I've got a theory of Olivier Giroud, though. I can't stand anyone calling him underrated, because everyone in the world thinks that Olivier Giroud is underrated. Does that not mean that he's very fairly rated? I don't think we can all think that he's underrated. So I think he's a great player, and I think he definitely could have something to say on Saturday, but he's not underrated.
It's a bit like Thomas Muller. Everyone goes, he's so underrated, and you're going, no, you're talking about him. Everybody's talking about him. How can he be underrated? It's crazy. Just looking at some of the comments coming in, I just want to clarify a couple of things. So somebody coming in asking, honestly, no Celtic talk. No, this isn't a Celtic podcast. This is your Friday night football podcast on A State of Mind, the Football Insomniac. If you're looking for the Celtic update, it was on the channel earlier. Tony Haggerty was joined by Russell Boyce and hosted by Laura Bradburn. Go and check that out if you're looking for that. But Facebook user comes in to say, Pep is a genius. I bet City didn't flirt with him for 3 months before securing his contract. At least they get him signed. CFC, get in the bin. Now, there's going to be a lot of angry Celtic fans, probably including myself tonight at the announcement over Eddie Howe, but we may cover that if I've got the ability to when we get down to the managerial merry-go-round. But we're starting here on the Champions League final, and Sean, looking ahead to the game, Guardiola's been playing that sort of false 9 tactic with Kevin De Bruyne sort of playing up front. He's got Riyad Mahrez and Phil Foden playing off him. Do you think that's something you'll go ahead for this game again, or is this the swan song, the dream swan song, the romantic swan song for Sergio Aguero?
I think much like Giroud, if Aguero's going to make an impact in this game, it will be off the bench. And I think that it will be the sort of weird 4-2-4 that City have been playing with De Bruyne and Silva up front, with Phil Foden and Mahrez either side. Because, I mean, in the league meeting a few weeks ago, City went with a sort of really weird back three, and Raheem Sterling was in central midfield, and it just seemed like one of those ones where the manager was trying to go, "Oh, we could do this in the Champions League final," when we all know fine well that Pep Guardiola isn't going to do that in the Champions League final. Like I alluded to earlier, he has sort of overthought the big games before, and I'm sure that he has got a plan to deal with Chelsea. Thomas Tuchel's a coach that he respects massively, and there's a brilliant piece in The Athletic this week by Raphael Honigstein about when they were both in Germany. They met in a pub one night, sort of by chance, quite an exclusive pub in Munich, and they ended up getting talking football, and they just spent hours at this table sort of moving like wine glasses and water around, talking about tactics and players, and they were recalling things from Pep's Barcelona team, and they just sort of like were fascinated by each other and their tactics. So I think that shows what type of game this is going to be. But Aguero, I think it would be pretty amazing if he was to get the winning goal in this game. You could see it. Obviously, he scored the biggest goal in Manchester City history, probably Premier League history as well. So it would be fitting for a striker who has come to England and made a massive, massive impact on football in that country. So it would be nice to see. It would be a nice wee story.
Yeah, and someone you mentioned there, Phil Foden, he's come in and had a fantastic impact on that Man City team. Now, someone still so young, he's so confident on the ball, he drives forward, he creates lots of chances for Man City. He is one of the stars of the future. How important is he going to be tomorrow night? I mean, this is a massive game for such a young, inexperienced player. You kind of hope that the sort of the nostalgia of the game and everything like that doesn't get to him, and you can actually see him actually playing very, very well.
Yeah, and he doesn't seem like the type of player who would be fazed by the occasion or anything like that. He just seems to love playing football. I mean, I saw Pep Guardiola talking about him today, and he says that before he was sort of happy just getting off the bench or starting a League Cup game, and now if he's not in the team, he expects Phil Foden to be knocking on his door and saying, why am I not playing? Because what reason could you have to drop Phil Foden after the season that he's had? And it's still so young. I'm thinking he turns 21 today.
Yeah.
And he's a gorgeous footballer, and he goes on these amazing runs and sort of slides and slaloms through opposition defenders that I saw a tweet a few weeks ago that said they reckon that Phil Foden could definitely score the best goal of all time, because there's so many opportunities where he picks it up on the halfway line and just dribbles right through, and he gets so close, or he just passes or something like that. And at one time this is going to come off, and I just think I think you talk about sort of your Mbappes and your Haalands, but I mean, I think Phil Foden could be in that conversation in the next couple of years. And it's just a shame he's English, really.
You just know, but if he does score a goal like that, it's going to be all over Sky Sports News. It's going to be all over BT Sport. You're never going to see the end of it because of the league that he plays in. Moravchik25 coming in here to say England should build a team around Foden instead of adopting the usual pragmatic tournament approach. Yeah, definitely. You look at it, you've got so much young talent in that English side. Now, I don't want them to do well against Scotland. That's a given. But if they're going to set up, you look at guys, as I said, like Foden, like Sancho, like Trent Alexander-Arnold. They've got a fantastic young squad. I have to do this. I'm sorry, Sean. I guess this is one of your pals, Ryan, just coming in to ask if Kelly stayed up. That would have been a sore one.
I know who that is. Honestly, never heard of him in my life.
Now, we spoke about Chelsea. Now, Timo Werner's someone who's been completely on and off the boil all season. He's almost had that Torres move, hasn't he? When he moved to Chelsea, Torres couldn't find the back of the net, was missing sitters left, right and centre. That's exactly what Werner's done. But Torres had that moment against Barcelona where Gary Neville goes into commentary history for his reaction to it. And it just shows that a class player like him can pop up at the most important times. Is that something we could expect Werner to do on Saturday? Do you think he could be the match winner?
I think so, because of a few things. I mean, first of all, like I mentioned, that high line that City play, they expect them to press up. They will be wary of the threat of Werner in behind, but it caused them problems in the FA Cup semi-final. So I think that Timo Werner getting in behind the City back line is a real sort of factor in this game. The other thing is that he's been so close these last few weeks. I mean, I think there's been 3 or 4 times in the last 2 or 3 games that he's had a goal chalked off for offside.
Yeah.
And he can time that one run perfectly in a Champions League final. Because although the finishing hasn't been there at times this season, and we could be sitting here after the game and talking about it and saying that it was the chances that Werner missed that cost Chelsea the Champions League. That could be the narrative as well. But I do just think that it'd be quite a story after sort of coming in, not really fitting into the team, struggling to settle. He had COVID, all that sort of stuff. But I just think that he's still a very, very good player, and I think that he definitely will come good for Chelsea. And why not start that off with the winning goal in a Champions League final?
There was a game the other week where the ball comes off the bar and he's on his own, or he's just going to head it into the back of the net, and I'm still going, he could miss this. That's the kind of at the PSG game. Yeah, that's the kind of the goal I expect him to miss because of the season that he's had. But yeah, it proves us wrong. Now, the kind of big talking point at Chelsea will be which goalkeeper they go with. Mendy's been struggling with injuries over the last couple of days, and Kepa could come back into the side. If it goes to penalties, will they trust Kepa? Who knows? We've seen what happened the last time Chelsea went to penalties with Kepa in goal. So who do you think will end up getting the gloves this Saturday?
I think that if Mendy's even sort of close to being fit, he'll be included. And that's not necessarily a slight on Kepa. I think that Tuchel's probably used Kepa quite well. I mean, he used him in the FA Cup semi-final against City. So it's not as though he'd be coming completely in from the cold. He has played a few games. But Mendy's probably been one of the standout keepers in the Premier League this season. I think he just sort of provides that assurance. I mean, there'll be Celtic fans watching this. They'll know that how important it is to have a confident goalkeeper behind you. That just gives you a back line. I mean, I know it from Coman at Colin.
Just watch the amount of digs you put in here, Sean.
I'd say but the importance of having a good goalkeeper behind you, not just in terms of shot stopping, but just the confidence it gives the entire team, I think could play a big role. And it's a psychological factor, isn't it? And if Mendy's there, I reckon Chelsea will just feel that a little bit more confident. They won't be overthinking sort of back passes and shots from distance and all that sort of stuff. Because we know that Kepa we saw it in the FA Cup final against Leicester, that it was a fantastic strike from Tielemans, but that's the kind of goal that Kepa tends to concede. The only positive is that it's Manchester City, so they don't tend to take those sort of risks from distance, but you never know.
You've said that now, and that's De Bruyne odds on to score one for about 35 yards. Definitely. So I'm going to push you now for a prediction. I'm going to go with City to win the game 2-1.
So I was talking about this game early in the week, so I'm going to stick with the same prediction. I could sort of cover the bases and go Chelsea, so at least I'm right on one show. But I'm going to stick with my prediction. I said 2-0 to Manchester City. I think that they will just sort of have the control of this game and see it out, and it'll be quite an amazing story, really. Man City winning their first Champions League after so many times falling at the hurdle. Yeah,
and we're going to get Stephen Tomlinson's we're going to get his prediction on the game later on when we go to an abbreviated version of the Super 7 this week, because there isn't really 7 good games to predict, which does mean that Sean will be facing Stephen in the first ever Insomniac shootout. It is going to be a quiz coming up. Unfortunately, we can't get into the car parks to have an actual shootout, so we're going for a quiz. So that'll be coming up at the end of the show. Let's take a look at the Europa League final now. I mean, let's probably just skip over the whole game because that was a dull, boring cup final. It's a real shame when you're looking forward to a game and then you sit there and watch it for 120 minutes, and probably the only bits that were exciting were the actual goals themselves, and at that, it wasn't too enthralling. So let's go to the penalties. 11-10 it finishes. All but one player scores their penalty, and it was, I think for me, it was written in the stars that David De Gea was missing that.
Yeah, after the sort of like high-profile mistakes he's had at Manchester United over the past few years, I just think that and he didn't look confident at all in any of them. I mean, you don't expect the goalkeeper to be a fantastic penalty taker, but I mean, he didn't really get near to any of them. And I think if you look back on it, a lot of United fans are asking, should Dean Henderson have been brought on to replace David De Gea for the shootout? I mean, Dean Henderson has saved 5 of his last 19 penalties, which is a pretty decent record. About 1 in 4. That's pretty good. The last time David De Gea saved a penalty was 2016, and the FA Cup.
35 penalties ago after the shootout. 35 penalties in a row he's let in. Incredible.
And I don't reckon I could save many penalties, but I just think that many penalties for a keeper like David De Gea, someone should be, or you at least should be able to put the striker off. I mean, or the penalty taker off. It's a pretty rotten record, and United fans were aware of it. Another really interesting thing from the shootout is the fact that Bruno Fernandes won the toss and let Villarreal go first. And I've never heard of that. Like, why would you do that? I mean, it seems obvious to anyone. I think I've read some numbers that said about 60% of the time, if you take the first penalty, you win the shootout. And because there's so much pressure on the United players, and it just so happened that they managed to sort of withstand that and score the penalties. But I don't understand why Bruno Fernandes would have chosen to say, "On you go first, Villarreal." That seems crazy.
I don't understand that. I always feel the pressure's on if you go second.
Definitely.
At least if you go first, you get it out the road. Now, some stats. This is the 7th Europa League / UEFA Cup final to go to penalties. This game was the most ever converted penalties in a knockout game in European football. As I said, United have now lost 6 of the last 7 penalty shootouts. That's probably because David De Gea has been in goal and he's conceded his last 35. Now, here's one for you, and I'm not sure if you'll know this. What was the first penalty shootout in European football? It did involve a Scottish team. Who do you think it was?
I'd be guessing, Colin. I don't know if I should be tuning into your allegiances and have a go at saying that Celtic were involved.
No, it was Aberdeen. And surprisingly, they lost 5-4 back in September 1970 against Budapest Honved. So one for the red tinted glasses boys who may or may not be watching, but they'll, I'm sure, remember that one. But look, the standard of the penalties was actually really, really good. I mean, even when it got down to the centre halves, Pau Torres and Axel Tuanzebe, both putting them in the top corner, they were outstanding.
I know, and I wonder if that's a thing that we're going to see going forward more in football. Just the fact that technically players are a lot better than they were before, and they can sort of, even defenders practice striking the ball and stuff like that. That when you do get into these later stages of penalty shootouts, that you're not actually too worried about your centre half. I mean, I don't know if that's transferred to Scotland yet. I'd still be worried about a few of them. I don't know if I'd fancy Kirk Broadfoot taking one for Kelly, but didn't even get to that, so we don't need to worry. But yeah, I think that.
Sorry, how did that finish the other night?
I can't even remember, mate. I don't know. We don't need to talk about it. But even like sort of Francis Coquelin, I mean, a player who was kind of laughed at when he was at Arsenal, didn't have much of a standing at all, apart from a few decent performances. He comes on in a big game against Manchester United when you know that like English media will be on you because you're a recognisable name, and he just smashes it into the top corner. But the best one, the keeper realies. I mean, the fact that he takes it as if he's taking a goal kick, like he's just got his feet through it and he's absolutely smashed it. Whereas David De Gea's tried to take a penalty, and I just think for a goalkeeper, don't bother, just smash it. Unless you're Ederson or something like that, don't try and place it or anything fancy. Just get it smashed into the back of the net.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, Torres, Tuanzebe, top corners, and you don't save those kind of penalties. Do you know what I mean? So as you said, if you get to that end of the line, the players that didn't want to step up and take them, and they can still put them away. I generally thought if De Gea was scoring, we were going round for a full circle again. I could see that going on all night. Just bringing up some of the comments. I just want to bring this one up. We've got someone watching who is clearly a Rangers fan, and he says, "Lads, you're probably both going to have insomnia the night." Now, Sean, what team do you support?
I support Kilmarnock.
Thanks. There we go. This is not a Celtic podcast, but thanks for joining in. Get involved. Let us know what you think of the Europa League final. This is a channel, or at least this is a channel for everyone, the Football Insomniac. Unai Emery, he's now won 4 Europa League titles. He is the Europa League poster boy. We were speaking about this before we came on air. He's only 49 years old. He could go on and manage for the next 20, 30 years, and he's got an incredible background behind him already. Over 850 games that he's managed. He's managed Valencia, PSG, Sevilla, Arsenal, Villarreal, Spartak Moscow. 4 Europa Leagues. He is the man to go to if you want to win that trophy.
It's just an unbelievable record. I mean, it's one of those things where I was talking about it to some pals, and I thought everyone's going to say, "Oh, he's got 4 Europa Leagues in less than a decade. What a record that is!" But I think that it's one of those things, because everyone's going to talk about it, you might become a bit sensitized to it, and you might not realise how mental it actually is. Like 4 Europa Leagues in that space of time, with teams who, it's not like he was at the top teams or teams with loads of money. I mean, Villarreal become the smallest club in terms of population of the area to win it. Just 50,000 people live in Villarreal, and they have won a major European trophy. It's astounding, really, and it wasn't expected at all. And I think that Unai Emery was sort of laughed at. I mean, the good evening part was funny, I guess, but also I don't know how many languages the folk who were taking the mick out of him can speak. And I think that he's shown. I think Unai Emery's a better coach than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I think you saw that over on Wednesday night in the Europa League final. And I think for a big club like Manchester United, if there's a better coach at a team like Villarreal, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's improved Man United gradually. I think that they're comfortably the second best team in England, but I think that it's kind of question marks over how far they can go, and how, like, are they going to sort of take this next step into being the elite in world football again? If they have a manager like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who didn't make a substitution until the 100th minute, is quite open in the fact that he doesn't really coach attacking patterns. It's all about the players expressing themselves and stuff like that. So I just think that Unai Emery's shown himself to be a fantastic coach. And I like the fact that he knocked out Arsenal and then won it against Manchester United and sort of got back at English media and English fans who took the mick out of him over the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, it's all aboard the Ollie train at Manchester United, definitely. When After25 comes in to say Emery's record at Arsenal is actually better than Arteta's, I mean, you see that in the stats. The only thing was that Emery lost the final to Chelsea, and I think from that point on, he was kind of out of favour with the Arsenal fans, which is a real shame because he is a fantastic coach and he's someone that I'm surprised isn't at a bigger team than Villarreal. But they're in Champions League next season, so there's definitely a lot to be said for that. Final thoughts on the game. Did the right team win? I think on the balance of things, having watched the game, I'd say so. I don't think Man United done enough to win it, and I think what was even better about that was just the commentators and the pundits in the studio going, "This is a major upset. This is a real surprise," and you're going, "No, it wasn't." I mean, trying to compare Villarreal to be almost like a championship side, that was the way they were kind of talking about them. They always do this, and it always backfires on them, and it's always great to see.
Aye. I mean, I loved it. And it's generally infuriating the time as well, though, when they speak about clubs like that. I mean, I don't think anyone's questioned the fact that Manchester United were the favourites going into this game. And they had, because of the sort of attacking weapons that they have. But the fact that Villarreal completely nullified those wasn't really a surprise, considering the performance against Arsenal, considering you know how good a coach Unai Emery is. And Gerard Moreno, who scored Villarreal's goal in normal time, has his 30th goal of the season. I don't feel like anyone's really talking about that, as if United don't have a 30 goal a season striker.
No.
This is a guy who will probably start for Spain in the European Championships, and I reckon he'll make a difference for them. He'll make an impact. So I think that and Pau Torres, like we spoke about, took a great penalty. Manchester United are linked to be interested in him. I don't understand this sort of notion that just because these that don't have absolute world beaters, that Man United were going to show up and absolutely walk over them. So I think I definitely think the right team won, and I think that I hope that this is a sort of change in attitude, and people don't sort of walk into these games thinking that the English team or necessarily the bigger team is always going to win, because I think that's what makes football so exciting, isn't it? The fact that Villarreal still had a sort of stake in this game, and they executed their game plan, they saw it out, and they won, and you saw how much it meant to the fans. I've seen pictures today that, I mean, the streets look lined with fans. There's a great headline in Marca, the Spanish paper, that it's not the yellow submarine, it's gold. And I think that was a nice headline from them.
Just some comments that's coming in. Graham Caldwell saying Villarreal were underestimated big time. No respect is given to Emery. All the pundits just thought it would be a matter of how many Man United would win by, and that is spot on. But I think that's the same no matter who an English team are facing. They always have this opinion that the English League's the best in the world, they've got the best teams and they're going to win everything, when it's never really been that case. So Dudabide comes in to say Scott McTominay actually played really well, and I've got to agree with that. I'm looking forward to seeing what Scott McTominay does at the Euros this summer. I think he's someone that's really grew into that role at Manchester United, and he's got a big future for both club and country.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think Wednesday for me actually nailed down Scott McTominay has to be in the midfield for Scotland, and I wasn't sort of opposed to the back three thing. I know a lot of people really didn't like it, but I thought that, I mean, you need one of those. You need a right-footed player who can play the ball, and Declan Gallagher, Grant Hanley are kind of like the stoppers in there. I thought Scott McTominay had some pretty decent performances. He sort of grew into that right centre-back role. Jack Hendry seems to be his alternative. How will he fare against sort of the best players in the world in the Euros? I mean, he's going to come up against sort of Harry Kane and Ivan Perisic, players like that. It'll be tough. But I think that the way he strolled that European final, especially the injuries that have happened in Scotland's midfield, I think that he definitely has to be one of the three. And it's great to see a Scottish player. It's been a long time since you've seen a Scottish player look so comfortable on such a big stage. And I definitely agree with you. He's got a massive future. And I think that it's the type of performance that sort of increases the idea that Scott McTominay could be a Manchester United captain one day. It was that good a performance, and he's that type of character.
Mate, after 25 just coming in to say that, McTominay, Man United captain going forward, and he does very much remind me of Darren Fletcher when he first broke free at Manchester United, and you could see why Sir Alex trusted him in the big games, and it's working out the same with McTominay down there. But yeah, on the balance of play, I think Villarreal deserve to win. Congratulations to them, and I look forward to seeing them in the Champions League next season. A big warm welcome to everyone who is joining us today. We're live on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. So if you've got anything you want to say, bring it up and we will discuss it later. Let's go on and talk about the managerial merry-go-round that's happening all across Europe at the minute. I mean, where do we start? Let's start in England. At the minute, Wolves and Spurs are the two big clubs that are looking for a manager. Looking at it, Wolves seem to only appoint managers who are agented by Jorge Mendes, because Wolves own 20% of his company, which means that Bruno Lage, the former Benfica manager, is the man that's linked with the job. Now, considering the news that just broke in Scotland about Eddie Howe, do you think he could come into the equation for maybe that Wolves job?
I think he could, definitely. I mean, Crystal Palace is another one there that you expect Eddie Howe to perhaps be linked to, but it does seem to be Wolves have those very close Portuguese links, and a lot of that is through Jorge Mendes. And I think that, I don't think it's a great record the former Benfica manager has. I mean, he left Benfica. The Sporting Lisbon have just won the title for the first time in 20 odd years. It's not been a great time for them, but Wolves will have their ideas about who they think best can sort of come in and sort of repeat the role that Nuno had. But I was reading today that apparently it was more Wolves pushing Nuno out than Nuno choosing to leave, which I found surprising, because I think that although it's not been a fantastic season for Wolves, the job he's done there and sort of turning them into a Midland Championship team to a very, very sort of solid Premier League side, and of course they've had sort of top 8 finishes in a couple of seasons. You expect him to sort of have a bit more weight around there and maybe be able to stay around for a bit longer. But I would expect Wolves to sort of stick with the Portuguese contingent, I think.
I mean, it's an interesting point on Nuno. What are Wolves looking to achieve? I mean, where do you think they actually see themselves? Because, yeah, okay, they finished top 10, and this is the first season that they haven't done so. But, I mean, that's going to happen. That happens when you get in a bit of a run. Surely you don't just bin the manager that's probably been one of the most successful in your recent history to bring in someone, as you say, who doesn't really excite the fan base. Is it surely not a case of better the devil you know?
I think so. And I thought when Nuno left Wolves, I thought they must have something lined up. They must have sort of a big name to get everyone excited. And it seems a bit sort of odd that they've gone for, I would say, a manager of lesser standing than Nuno. And I guess Wolves' ambitions, based on what Leicester have done in the past couple of seasons, I know they've fallen away at the end, but you think that clubs like that are going to be looking to emulate the formula that Leicester have put in place in trying to break into the top six, or the traditional big six. But I see Wolves a little bit off that. Their sort of recruitment seems a little more scattergun. They don't seem to have the same sort of analysis in place to make sure they get the exact right transfer targets. And it does, like you said, it seems to be a lot linked to who the agent is. So until they sort of abandon that and go for a more sort of forward-thinking approach, I reckon that Midland Premier League is kind of their ceiling.
You look at it, someone that's almost like been offered to every single club this summer is Mauricio Pochettino. Now, for me, it's a real surprise that he's going to be leaving PSG so shortly after joining them. There's talks ongoing that he's meant to be looking to make his move back to Spurs, something that does surprise me, but also that Real Madrid are interested. Out of the two clubs, where could you see him ending up between Spurs and Real?
It's an interesting one. I think that Spurs would be more likely because of the links there already. And I think that some of his family are still in London. He sees that as kind of like a permanent residency along with like his usual home in Barcelona. And I think that PSG is one of the toughest jobs in world football because you don't have that much control. The hierarchy are very much sort of on your case there. And I think that it's been reported that Pochettino doesn't particularly like that he was used to having more control at Spurs. And if he comes back to Spurs now with Daniel Levy sort of grovelling after punting him to get in Jose Mourinho because he thought, he loved Jose Mourinho. He thought he was one of the best coaches in world football. With the new stadium, that was going to take Spurs in the documentary, that Spurs were going to become one of the big
What a documentary, by the way. Just got to say that. That is incredible.
It was fun. And Mourinho made that. If it was Pochettino, it wouldn't have been the same, obviously. It was great entertainment. But, I mean, if you wanted to sack your manager for the sake of a documentary, then I guess that says a lot. And I think that Real Madrid, I mean, we'll talk about other candidates soon. I think Pochettino will have conversations with them both. It depends what route they both want to go down. But I don't see a better manager. I think Real Madrid could attract perhaps better managers than Mauricio Pochettino. But for Spurs, I don't see them getting anyone better than him. And it would be an admission of the mistake that they made in letting him go and the kind of complete failed experiment with Mourinho. Because we all looked at that and thought those two just don't go together at all. And it's turned out to be exactly the case.
Now, it could be a straight swap here with Pochettino going to Real and Zidane going to Spurs. Zidane, that's a strange one for me. I know, obviously, they didn't really do particularly well in the Champions League. They didn't win the title. I think he's proved himself to be a very good coach. Where do you see his next challenge being?
Zidane's an interesting one because, I mean, it's not very often you'd say about a manager who's won 3 Champions Leagues that I'm actually not too sure about how good a coach he is, because those teams were they seemed to be sort of carried by the players. He didn't seem to have he was sort of just given that nudge to go and express himself. It seemed like at the time that it was your Ronaldos, your Sergio Ramoses, your Karim Benzema's who really sort of carried them to the. And I'm not saying that he had no input at all, but I just mean that I think that it was very much the players at the forefront of that. And I still think that tactically there's questions about Zidane. I do think, though, that if Pochettino was to leave Spurs, Zidane at PSG, if Pochettino was to leave PSG, that Zidane going to Paris would make a lot of sense because he'll be used to not having that sort of control with someone like Florentino Perez over him at Real Madrid. Obviously, it's his home country. He'll know how to deal with the star players, Neymar, Kylian Mbappe, having done so with some of the best in the world at Real Madrid. So if the PSG job becomes vacant, I think that is almost a cert. I see Zidane becoming manager there.
I mean, he'd definitely be given the budget to go and sign who he wants. You see that when PSG bring their managers in. We spoke about Emery, who obviously is a former PSG manager. But you look across Europe, there's so many vacancies out there at the minute. Looks as if Inter Milan are looking for a new manager. Conte, gone. Juventus, they've sacked Pirlo. In comes Allegri once again. Lille, Christopher Guillard leaves the club. It's been a really strange and interesting period across European football. But closer to home, the most interesting appointment over the last week or so for me is Malky Mackay. Malky Mackay back in Scottish football at Ross County. Now, it's really split the Ross County fan base, and it's completely understandable considering everything that's happened to Mackay over the last couple of years. In fact, you're going as far back now as I think it's 2012, 2013. So the Kick It Out have come out and said it's okay. They kind of agree with the appointment and allowing him to carry on with his career because he's went on and done equality and diversity training under the English FA. Is this a second chance that he deserves? And if it is, do you think it is a good appointment for Ross County?
It's a really tough one, and people feel very strongly about it either way. And I think I definitely do believe in second chances. But for me personally, and Malcolm Mackay has been linked to the Kilmarnock job before, I would really struggle to get behind the Kilmarnock team that was managed by Malcolm Mackay. And that's just personally, I think that the role of football clubs in society are to be reflective of their communities and to serve their communities. And I think that that's everyone in a community. And some of the comments that Mackay was involved in, they were racist, anti-Semitic, homophobic, misogynistic.
Yep.
There's so many sort of, I don't even, he's crossed so many lines in those conversations, and I think that he's had a long time out of the game, or sort of he was at the SFA and stuff like that. There's still question marks over how good a coach Malcolm Mackay is. He did a very good job at Cardiff. He got them promoted. He got them to a League Cup final. I think it's a risk for Ross County. I think John Hughes, but with no means perfect, but he kept them up there. I don't know what the situation is in terms of did Hughes leave. I reckon John Hughes, if he was offered the Ross County job, would have kept it. I think he'd still be there. And if John Hughes has been made way for Malcolm Mackay, I don't see much logic in that. But on the sort of appropriateness of it, I guess, I'd personally feel uncomfortable, but I get that Ross County fans are the most important ones in this particular conversation, and it's up to them how they feel about it.
I think he's going to have to do really well to win over the fan bases. It's already an appointment which is causing a lot of trouble. Now, Ross County, again, a team that lives off the fans that they've got. The revenue they get from fans coming through the gate is basically what keeps them afloat, although they do have a fantastic chairman in Roy McGregor. So, obviously, he's sat and weighed this up, and he's thought that the benefits outweigh the negatives, and we can only see what happens, but you just know if it goes terribly for him, then all this is going to get brought back up and it just goes full circle all over again.
And there seems some interesting things going on at Ross County in the last couple of days. I mean, with the players they've let go, apparently Michael Gardine, who's their top appearance holder and a top goal scorer in the club's history, was told he was going to be released via Zoom yesterday, which is, and he was due to be back in Dingwall the following day, and they just rushed it through and chucked him on a Zoom call and told him that he's not coming back. And I just think that, I mean, Ross County are, like you said, a club that's very reliant on the small core of fans that they have, and that's not deriding them in any way. That's just the fact of it.
It's a good community club. They've got a really good spirit up there.
Well, and there's previous comments from Roy McGregor saying it's really important that they sort of do that they have integrity, that they show that they are a community-focused club. And when you're doing things like chucking your record appearance holder over Zoom, and you're appointing a manager who has the potential to alienate large swathes of your support, and that's not just the people in the bracket who Mackay has sort of had conversations about and made those inappropriate comments about. That's other people who just don't feel comfortable. I mean, I don't fall into any of those categories, but I would not feel comfortable with Malcolm Mackay being the manager of my football club. So I think that it's a very risky business for Ross County. I think that any goodwill that they've sort of built up in the wider Scottish football community has kind of been taken away over these last few days. And I think that a lot of people will be thinking, I wouldn't mind seeing County going down next season.
And you know what? I think it's going to be difficult for them. When you look at the teams that have came up with Hearts and Dundee, I'd certainly say they're one of the favourites that could potentially go down. But, I mean, it's going to be a fantastic league this season coming up. Now, we do have Stephen Tomlinson waiting in the background just to go on to the Insomniac shootout quiz. But before we do, we're going to break into our next topic, which is the random football news. This is 4 stories from the world of football, which you may or may not have seen, and this is our take on them. So first of all, we're going to start with Madrid and back to Real. Now, the famous Santiago Bernabeu caught fire as part of ongoing redevelopments to the stadium. Fantastic stadium, and it was kind of strange seeing it getting set ablaze. Firefighters worked throughout the night, and Madrid have been playing their games at the Alfredo Di Stefano, which is like the reserve stadium, whilst these works have been ongoing. Madrid police released a statement saying they were looking for a witness who may have seen the culprit, and one such witness came forward to say that a man matching the description of UEFA President Alexander Cherifin was spotted running from the scene with a jerry can, saying, "That one's for the Champions League, that one's for the Super League." Barcelona and Juventus are said to be on guard. Sean, what have you heard?
Well, I'm hearing that Daniel Sturridge is back in the headlines this week. It's a name I've not heard for a while, but he hasn't signed for anyone. Instead, a Los Angeles man, Foster Washington, has launched a lawsuit against the former England striker, claiming he still owes him £25,000 after finding the striker's missing dog almost 2 years ago. I remember the story at the time as well. Sturridge's dog, Lucci, went missing in July 2019 and was found by Washington the following day. TMZ Sports reports that Washington has now filed a lawsuit as he hasn't received any money, and it's a bit reminiscent of the dog who went missing in Glasgow a few weeks ago. There was that GoFundMe page and loads of donators and stuff like that, and then they were refunded a few days later. So I don't know, that was a bit strange, but we're probably better moving on from that one quickly.
You're opening up too many bombshells on that one.
I might be. So we better move on to, I know, one that you're keen to talk about, Colin, and that's one that should be very, very interesting. It's a film of Jamie Vardy's career could be getting made, and this just sounds brilliant. This week it was reported by the Mirror that Adrian Butcher, the director of the Goal and Goal 2 films,
fantastic films, great films,
the best, mate. It's bringing back so much childhood nostalgia. He's working with some Oscar-winning producers to make this film. It's still in early development, but some of the names being chucked in there is former High School Musical star Zac Efron and former One Direction singer Louis Tomlinson. I'm not sure about the resemblance there in terms of appearance. Have you got any ideas about who you might want to play Jamie Vardy?
Oh, I'm telling you, and I'm being sort of biased here, but a local hometown boy is DCI Steve Arnott. Get Matty Compston in there. He was born to play that role. He played for Morton, so that would cover Vardy's time in the Lowland, not the Lowland League, the non-league football. That was his standard. Get him in there. Just picturing him walking about the streets singing, "Chat, shoot, get bang, chat, shoot, get bang." That's him. Like, he's set up for that. I'm going for Martin Compston for that job. But finally, a senior official in the South American Football Division, Football Federation, Eduardo De Luca, was found guilty this week of money laundering. He's said to owe CONMEBOL, which is the Football Federation of South America, almost £2 million after using a Swiss bank account to basically hide money that he'd received in bribes for TV and marketing rights. The 79-year-old pled guilty, and almost £1.5 million of that money has been returned. The question is, where's the other 500,000? And what punishment did De Luca get for his crime? A £20,000 fine. 20 grand for stealing £2 million. 16,000 of that suspended. All that proves is that crime pays. That's all that proves. It's a bit like the football fair play. What happens when you go over that? You pay a fine. It's ridiculous. I meant to ask you, who would you have in playing Jamie Vardy?
That's a tough question. I mean, where's Zac Efron coming from?
I don't know.
Where it says, so, if we're going with that, why not just get Brad Pitt or George Clooney or something like that? I mean, if we're going left field, let's go for the proper blockbusters, the Hollywood stars.
How tall do you think Jamie Vardy is? About 6 foot, 6'1"?
He's not small, but he's not like massively tall, is he?
Oh, that definitely means that Tom Cruise could play him, considering his background in playing guys that are about 3 foot taller than him. But that was your random football news. We'll be back next week with 4 more random stories from the world of sport. Now, just about to introduce a guest here. This is the first time we have done this on the Football Insomniac, but he is someone who's been on before. Stephen Tomlinson, how's it going?
All right, guys, what's happening with you?
Great to have you in, mate. Now, normally this is the segment where we would do the Super 7, looking ahead to 7 of the biggest games in the world of football this week. But, as you know, the seasons are wrapping up and we only really have 3 to get to. So, very quickly, we're going to go through them. And we've already gave our predictions for the Champions League final. Stephen, how do you see that one going?
I think Manchester City, they have enough to win it. I go 3-1 to Manchester City.
Yeah, I think that's what we've all agreed. City will probably win this, although Sean almost went back on his statement, and I don't know who he's really secretly going for. I think his head says City, but his bookie slip says Chelsea. Now, the biggest game they claim in world football is the Championship playoff final. Brentford are up against Swansea at Wembley. I can only see this going one way. I'm going for a 2-0 Brentford win. Sean, who are you going for?
I'll also go for Brentford. I would like to see a bit more sort of some new teams in the top flight in England, so I'll say Brentford and I'll say 3-1.
3-1. Stephen?
Well, Swansea do have form in the playoffs before, don't they? I think they've went up by that before, but I do want Brentford to go up, to be honest, so I'll go 2-1 Brentford.
2-1 Brentford. And then finally, the League One playoff. We would have covered the League 2 one, but there might be a reason for that we're not. Blackpool are playing Lincoln. Now, Blackpool, a team that have been on the down for the last couple of seasons. It's good to see them bouncing back, and I think that form will keep them going. They had a great result against Oxford United in the semi-final. I'm backing them to go up. I'm going for 1-0 Blackpool. Sean?
Yeah, Blackpool have all the form going into this one, but I'm going to say that that's out the window in a playoff final. So I'll say Lincoln to go up 2-1.
Oh, interesting. Stephen?
Well, see, to be fair, I'm with Sean on this one. I think Lincoln, they've been in the news a few years now for causing upsets, so I'll go Lincoln 2-1.
I mean, they did have a good result over Sunderland, and I think Sunderland were probably the favourites for that whole playoff. But I mean, you take a look at the names that they've released there, and it's a far cry from the Sunderland that was in the Premier League only a few seasons ago. So you're going for 3-1 Lincoln, was that?
2-1.
2-1 Lincoln. So we'll check that up and we'll put the points tally together and we'll have it up for next week. But this is the bit you've all been waiting for. It is the Insomniac shootout. It is our first ever quiz on the channel. Now, it's 5 questions each, a bit like a penalty shootout. You will alternate between them. Oh, look, I'm Stephen sweating already. And if it's 5-5 after that, we'll go to a tiebreaker question. So, as I said to you before you came on, everything has been about what has happened in football this week. So, Sean, as you are my co-host this evening, you get to go first. So the first question is to you. And who scored Manchester United's goal in the Europa League final?
Edinson Cavani.
1-0. He's put it to the left-hand side. De Gea was never getting there.
Nice.
Stephen, who scored Villarreal's goal?
The show.
Boys, I can't even remember. I have to pass.
He's put it wide of the target. It's former Liverpool man Alberto Moreno. It's 1-0 to Sean after 1 kick each. Sean, question 2. There's still time. There's time to bounce back. Don't worry. Question 2, Sean. Liverpool signed Ibrahima Conte for £35 million from which club?
He's not having these questions. RB Leipzig.
2-0. 2-0. Stephen, the comeback's going to need to start soon. It's going to need to start soon.
He's been nice to me.
Stephen, who scored St Johnstone's goal in the cup final at the weekend?
Sean Rooney.
There he goes. He's back in it. It's 2-1. 2-1. Question 3 for you, Sean. Who did Italy face in their opening Euro 2020 game? Now, this has came up this week after the Italian squad was rumoured to be announced, and it looks as if there's going to be some big players missing out.
I think that's the first game, isn't it, as well?
It is the very first game of Euro 2020 happening in 2021, ironically.
Doesn't mean I know who they're playing. It's actually going to be a complete... I can't even think who's in their group. I'm trying to think of the teams who qualified, and I'm just stalling now. So
You're hoping somebody comments in here to give you the answer. I can see that.
Somebody check that. We'll say Wales.
Unfortunately, it's Turkey. So it's Italy v Turkey. This is your chance. This is your chance, Stephen, to pull it back in. And you'll see why you didn't get asked this question now, Sean. What was the aggregate score between Dundee and Kelly in the Premiership playoff final? Stephen, come on. You told me you were going to do your research.
Was it 4-2?
Sean, what was the score?
It was 4-2 to Dundee.
Oh, and it's level after 3. It's 2 each.
I got it right, didn't I?
Yeah, you got it right, yeah.
Right,
He wasn't even sure if he'd got that right there.
I thought you were passing the question over to Sean. I was like, what?
No, Sean's a Kilmarnock fan, so
right, okay.
He would definitely know what the score was going to be.
Yeah.
Now, Sean, a team that Kelly will be playing next season is Morton, and who did they announce today as their new manager?
Gus McPherson.
Correct. Gus McPherson is the new manager of Morton Football Club, signing a 2-year deal. Now, Stephen, we said that we weren't going to discuss the League One playoff final. That's because it's a question in the quiz. Who will Morecambe be playing in the League One playoff final on Sunday?
Portsmouth.
Oh, no, I mean, there was Port in it, but it is Newport County. Unlucky. So the advantage goes back to Sean. Sean, your final question. Let's see how this goes. You score this, you've basically won it. David Alaba has just signed a 5-year deal with which club? This has only happened today.
These questions are, I think I've been lucky with them. It's Real Madrid.
It is Real Madrid. That's 4 out of 5. Would you have gotten that, Stephen?
100% would have gotten that. Bells on everything. What's going on?
Well, there's a reason why Sean didn't get this next one. Who did Kelty Hearts appoint as their new manager this week?
Kevin Thompson.
Kevin Thompson is correct. So the final scores is Sean 4, Stephen 3. The Insomniacs win the shootout. Congratulations, Sean. This is your 30 seconds to gloat.
I'm not used to winning quizzes, so I'm quite happy with that. But I think I was pretty lucky with the way the questions fell. I don't know. I think if I was in Stephen's shoes, I don't know how well I would have done. So,
what concerned me, Sean? He kept looking at your wall. Do you have them all written down, as he told you beforehand?
Yeah, he's told them. We're all just here.
See, so Stephen, Sean works alongside Amy, my former Wednesday host on A Celtic State of Mind, Bonnie Rig Rose. So I had to make sure that the questions didn't suit his Kilmarnock following, his Lowland League following, but there's been lots happening this week. I'm going to throw it out there because we've got a couple of minutes, so it'd be a shame to waste this question. The tiebreaker question was going to be, now I'm going to get both of your answers on this. What is the current capacity of the Santiago Bernabeu? We spoke about this earlier in Random Football Knows that it caught fire. Sean, you won. You've got first dibs on this. I'm going for the actual number, and we'll see who got closest.
I don't know. I know that the renovations that they've done, they've lost one seat or something like that, or they've gained one. It's a very small. They've not done much to it. I don't know. It's 79,817.
79,817. What would you have went with, Stephen?
82,146.
Oh, come on.
I know Fir Park's bigger, but you know what I
mean. So, I mean, Sean, you would have won that. I had to do some quick math there. That was really difficult. In fact, no, you wouldn't have. Do you know what? It's Friday night. We're all about to go out and have a couple of drinks. Who is doing some math? The actual answer was 81,044. I think these are kind of similar both sides. I'd need to try and sit there and work it out. Stephen, you're about 1,100 off it. And Sean, you are 1,170 off it. Stephen, you would have won it. Let me go. See that? If only he got to that stage. But no, Sean, congratulations. We will be bringing back the Insomniac shootout next week. I don't know whether I'll be joined by Callum or Sean or whoever I'll be joined by, but I'm looking forward to it. We'll be looking ahead to the Euros. A lot more squad announcements will be taking place this week. Stephen, tell everyone where they can catch you.
Well, I do the Endless Cells podcast, so on Twitter, at Cells Endless, on Instagram, it's Endless Cells News, and then obviously YouTube, Endless Cells podcast, so we're easy to find. we're up and coming, new Celtic podcast. So have a watch, have a listen, guys.
And Sean, it has been a pleasure doing the show with you this week. It's been great having you on. Tell everyone where they can find you.
Thanks for having me, Colin. I'm on Twitter at SeanMcGill8.
And you are posting stuff for ENRG Sports, and you'll also find him doing some work on the media team at Bonnie Rig Rose. Now, this has been a fantastic hour or so. I'm sure it's lightened up the spirits of some fans across Scottish football, although some already had a big smile across their face. But for everyone that's watching, have a great weekend. Stay safe, stay well, and we'll be back at 6 p.m. next Friday night. Until then, take care.